Oh, so we are so thrilled to bring this next guest onto the show. If you're on horse racing Twitter, you're very familiar with him. He's known as the Longshot Lad, my buddy from back in the day. Kev Humphreys, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Good to be here.
Hey, so glad to have you, man. And like I said, if you don't know Kev, you should go check him out, especially around the time of Royal Ascot or the Art Card, because Kev is one of the best Euro handicappers on Twitter, and probably in the world, but definitely on horse racing Twitter. So I always hit him up, or you can see him sometimes on Steve Bick's show. He hits him up, and Kev comes on to discuss the international races because he's great at digging deep and finding these long shots that either win or hit the board. So what better time to bring Kev on the show than Breeders' Cup week, because there's a lot of Euro and Japanese participation. So I think we'll do it like this. We'll do a little bit on Friday because there's a lot of Euro 2-year-olds coming over. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll jump into the Saturday card and then finish up, obviously, with City of Troy in the Classic. That sound good to you dudes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, you're driving the bus. Awesome. We're good.
All right, cool. So we'll start with the Juvenile Turf Sprint because this is a race that the Euros have increasingly embraced, I think, year after year. And this year there's 7 Euros and 1 Japanese horse among 12 horses. And frankly, on paper, at least, they tower over the Americans. The 2 most interesting horses to me, at least on paper, are the Japanese horse, Okoro Sig, who ran the fastest 1,200 meters of any 2-year-old in the history of Japanese racing last time out. And I think Aidan O'Brien's horse on the outside, Ides of March, is pretty interesting. Those 2 seem to have the most upside. But, Kev, these are lightly raised horses. You know, there's 2-year-olds always have improvement in them. You know, we have the top 4 finishers from the Flying Childers stakes.
Childers, yeah.
hope I'm getting that right. So who are you leaning towards? You know, what do you think of the Japanese horse? And is there anybody that you think could jump up at a price?
Yeah, so look, I think it's interesting. You bring a lot of race form dynamics, not just across America, but across Europe and Japan. When I looked at the card for this, and particularly once the field was drawn, I was writing down speed. I think there's a huge amount of speed on here. The likes of Big Mojo, the Japanese horse Echo Strike, they have a lot of speed. Astorius has speed as well. And again, I know the common wisdom is that, you know, Del Mar, you need to be, you know, on or near the lead for turf. But at the same time, some of these sprint races have had burn-ups. I actually was looking back in 2017, when actually my last Breeders' Cup, when I was there in Del Mar, Declaration of Peace literally came from last, coming around the turn to win this race. It was kind of a non-Breeders' Cup race, but it can be done with a good horse. And you alluded to Ides of March there with Frankie, like he's probably a pace pressure as well. So like the way I'm kind of reading it from a race dynamic perspective is you've got someone like Whistle Jacket who, you know, you remove his last run and where he was odds on to win a Group 1 in the UK, the Middle Park, soft ground. So again, we're looking at different criteria here. The race could be set up for him as a you know, he's proven over 6. He's a top class colt. He's, you know, he maybe wouldn't be the most straightforward, but at the same time, you know, burying him in a wall of horses to get him out from kind of one swift move feels like it could happen. And something similar would be maybe Magnum Force as well. Jerline's 2-year-old colt with Colin Keane on board. Again, a little bit disappointing in Doncaster, but you know, he's strong traveling. And again, that's from a race dynamic perspective, you feel that it could just blow up. And, you know, I'm not against the guys that say, look, the Japanese horse looks sensational. He hasn't really been missed in the market. So, you know, I think he was put in as close to morning line favourite. And there's been a lot of word from him. He looks extremely fast. But, you know, he probably hasn't faced the pace pressure that he'll face against some of the UK sprinters. And then you have some of the US guys if they can catch up as well. So I had speed. I think the last time, you know, I'm not saying the last time, but maybe I remember having something like this, writing this down when Arch Lorraine won the Distaff, when you just saw it on paper and you saw a lot of horses with ones next to their name going, this could happen. There's a scenario that this could actually happen, and an absolute pace meltdown. And you want to be the right side of that. Look, if the Japanese horse wins, I'm happy to kind of say what a like I won the colt and beat me, but I'll try to find the way I'm looking at it, 2 horses at a price, and Whistle Jacket and Magnum Force. I think, look, Whistle Jacket, given look, his connections might bring his price down a little bit, but at the same time, you're getting a Group 1 winner, a Group 1 performer that has a big pace set up to run into.
Right. No, excellent insight. Kevin, I'm going to shift gears on you and go to a race that's near and dear to my heart. Joe, I know you're not surprised. I'm going to talk about the juvenile filly turf race on Friday, where, their odds favorite is Lake Victoria, 8-5. Betting against Aidan O'Brien, Tabor Smith et al., a Franco filly, you're going to go bankrupt, betting against them. She's undefeated. But some people are calling Lake Victoria as much of a lock as Next and Cogburn and Torpedo Anna. I'm looking at it, and again, I'm looking at it through a different lens because I have two horses in the race. But, the filly's never been around 2 turns. She inherited the rail. She's shipping to, across the world, new surroundings, tighter layout, has to go around turns for the first time. Which Lake Victoria is going to show up? The one that the betting public has made as an 8-5, or the morning line odds maker has made an 8-5, or hey, there's a chink in her armor, based on her racing style or her past performances. Give me an argument for it.
Yeah. So look, I think with this race, sometimes I go through the past years, and actually Aidan O'Brien doesn't have a brilliant record in this race. He has a better record in the Colts version. He's brought over some good fillies in this, the likes of Happily September, Roly Poly, and so on. Good horses or good fillies who haven't quite won. He did win it a couple of years ago at Mediate, who went off at about 2-1. She came into that race off a second in the Middle Park. Mm-hmm. And you are looking at maybe a slightly lower price for a dominant winner of the Middle Park. And so that was the one where Aidan O'Brien's fillies have been quite interesting this year, because there's always this kind of game to see who the best filly is in a stable, 2-year-olds, and see how things go on. So it started with Giselle. There was the big rumors before she started. She got beaten in her maiden by Bedtime Story, who was the new horse. Fairy Godmother and Bedtime Story both won a Royal Ascot, and they were the horses kind of leading the charge. And Lake Victoria was quietly building up a great resume, then went to the Moyglaire in the Cur over 7 furlongs, won that relatively well against a small but deep field. She came back a couple of days later and trounced the middle part field, probably a lesser quality race, but she was very impressive, and with a slightly different run style. Again, maybe your worry is that she breaks a little slow and is in traffic, but I think she is the horse to beat. I think she is kind of in that banker territory. I'm trying to kind of get a read of the American form to try to understand, is there anything that can beat it? The bit I've kind of landed on is, like, Heaven's Gate is a very good deputy for Aidan O'Brien. I think she's kind of like Content last year, who kind of ran fourth at a big price for Aidan O'Brien, getting better each run. Was probably a personal best last time out. But then the horse just behind her, Fiery Lucy, looks like she's learning on the job. She has just settled a lot better, and again, she's drawn 10 or 11. She's drawn quite wide. She'll be a big prize. Like Cronwell and Gavin Cronwell and Gary Carroll, they're not big names in the US. They'll probably fly under the radar a little bit. He's a brilliant trainer, and he's a brilliant target trainer. So the same connections had a horse a couple of years ago who ran 6th or 7th in the Filly Mare Turf, Princess Yazga. They're coming back. They'll have probably learned a few lessons. I always think the second time you come traveling, you learn a bit of lesson. And like, he's a very good Royal Ascot record. I think his first 2 or 3 horses won and they were placed. So he knows what to do when traveling. And look, at 20-1 plus, she could have run the race of her life and come 6th. But at the same time, she could anything. You're trying to get the bonus on top of that, and 3rd, 2nd. If the stars align, she wins. You get a huge prize. But I'm always trying to find ways to bet against the Europeans to see, is there anything from a US angle. I haven't quite been sold on anything just yet, so I'm happy to try to find a way of covering the 3 and seeing if they kind of if they go 1-2 or 1-2-3 even.
I think John will sell you on 2 horses in particular in this race because he's got the 2 Nitrogen, and on the outside he's got Vixen, who I thought both ran really good races in the Talma lightly raced horses, who I think can step it up. We also got to touch on the top U.S. hope, at least on paper, Thought Process for Phil D'Amato. Local horse has already won twice over the Del Mar turf, is handy. She can go to the front, or she can sit a little bit. I think this is a really interesting race just because I think I wouldn't be surprised from anything between Lake Victoria winning by 5 lengths or a 40-1 shot coming in and winning. So it's one of those races I think you kind of you spread a little bit and then you punch or lean on Lake Victoria. Interesting note is that the Euros have only won 3 of 16 runnings of the juvenile fillies turf. They've done a lot better in the boys version. So let's switch over to the boys version. To me, this is the most wide open of the races on Friday. The top 2 in the summer, New Century and Al Qudra, I think will rightfully take a lot of money. But I thought they both, I mean, John, you were in the race, so you can touch on this as well. I thought they both benefited from a really, really fast pace and a good setup that day. And not to blow smoke, John, but I thought Dream On might have actually run the best race that day. He made the first move into that quick pace. There's some Euros with some intriguing form, and there's an undefeated Japanese horse at the rail too. Seems like there's a lot of ways to go here. And John, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well. But Kev, where do you lean in this race? And do you share my sentiment that this is one of the more wide open races on Breeders' Cup weekend?
Yeah, I do. And I think I had in my notes that Dream On ran a great race in Woodbine as well. I thought New Century and Al Qudra, they ran good races, and I think they've been knocking heads a few times. But they feel like there's very solid horses, but they feel quite beatable as well. And I've always had a piece like my trend was always to go first time in the US rather than second time in the US, and or maybe North America to be precise here. So I would prefer some of the other Europeans, and probably Henry Matisse is probably the one. Again, like a lot of Aidan's horses, they're not quite straightforward. And if you saw him in the national stakes, he was leaning all over Seagull's 11, and even then you kind of have to forgive him that. You have to forgive him his Longshot run as well over soft, where he just never really got going. And again, you're pinning your hopes on a return to fast ground and a pace setup, and he can kind of sprout wings. But again, with Aidan and Ryan, you're paying a little bit of a premium from a price perspective. The other Godolphin horse, Amori City, again, Buick rides, which is kind of a nod against Al Qudra, where I suppose James Joel is an able deputy, but he's failed the Group 1 test already, and is he going to absolutely definitely improve over a mile and this type of test? Who knows? The 2 Hugo Palmer runners, I think they're improving, and I think I wouldn't be they could go off big prices, and again, I wouldn't ever want to put off people back in big prices, particularly drawn in the middle. We'll probably try to, Seagull's 11 ran a big race in the national stakes. He disappointed subsequently, but I think he has the Group 1 form in the book. The interesting one, I kind of looked at the Japanese horse. I've watched his replays. He's gone left-handed, right-handed. He's kind of done the Lake Victoria piece of he's run over 7. He's gone back to 6, upped in class, and doesn't actually look as impressive. But he's grounded out. He's gone left-handed. He's gone right-handed. He'll improve for the step up. And again, draw 1 probably isn't ideal, but it'll be. I think with the Japanese horses, you're trying to figure the mystique is gone to some degree in that you're not getting a Marshall Lorraine price or even a Love's Only You price who wasn't too bad as a top quality horse in filly mares. They're coming with that premium, and since a lot of the international meetings, there's 3, 4, 5 of them as well that you have to decipher. Here you've got the one, but with it being wide open, with there being a few strong enough US contingent, you've got a lot of options. And look, I would probably, if I was leaning on 2, I'd probably go for Henry Matisse and Satono Carnival. But I would not be very, very strong on either. It's just probably understanding that it's a wide open race.
Yep. Yep. And Kevin, I think you're right. It is wide open. We looked at the race and we were hoping last night that we would get a pretty good post draw with our horse Dream On the 2. I'm happy with the post draw because he does show a little bit of speed. I couldn't find the races for Satona Carnival online. I'll look again a little bit deeper to try to see if he does have any speed because that one post is going to be a detriment if he doesn't have any kind of early speed or can't use it. But Joe, thank you for bringing up Dream On. I thought he ran a great race. He's improving, and I know that Mark Cassie, who has a number of horses, running this weekend out in California, he said to me the other day, I hope Dream On makes the ship okay because he's training better than he ever has, and he's maturing and he's developing, and that's kind of the hold card for Not This Time is they get better and better as they get older. So I wouldn't trade our position for anybody else in the race. Are we going to win? I don't know. It's a 14 horse race, so you never know, but I wouldn't trade positions with anybody in this race, especially based on what Kevin's saying. As far as the imports have some question marks. I think the locals have some question marks also.
No doubt. And I don't love the morning line. I don't think he's going to be 20-1, but if he's anything close to that, I think he's the clear value of the race. And I think Kev brings up a good point too, and we'll touch on it when we come back from the break and do Saturday. The Japanese horses aren't a secret anymore. Right. There people are looking, and people have noticed trends that they're going to start to come over and compete in these big races. We saw it with Forever Young in the Derby. He wasn't a secret. He was one of the top choices. So that's an interesting, you kind of start to look towards these horses, but you also got to accept fair value too.
Right.
All right. Great stuff about Friday. Big card on Saturday, obviously, and it culminates in the Classic. So curious to hear your thoughts on City of Troy, and we'll do it right after this break.